Kia ora, tēnā tātou katoa, ko Unicia Veer tōku ingoa, ko papa mau tōku whenua kura, ko maua te monga, ko toronga te moana no o te tahi ahau. Kia ora and welcome to the Sorted Money Month webinar. My name is Unicia and I'm your kai whakahaere, your facilitator for today. This is our third session of for Money Month and it's really exciting to have you guys here with us. With us, we have the Retirement Commission, so Te Ara Ahunga Ora. Te Ara Ahunga Ora, the Retirement Commission, does fantastic work in the communities, in schools, and workplaces, and ultimately they do research as well. And we get to see a lot of that research, the results of that through Sorted, which is the public-facing side of Te Ara Ahunga Ora. So you'll get to see all their different guides, tools, and obviously they're on social media as well, so you can connect with them there. My name is Unicia. So I am a chartered accountant, I'm an ex-auditor, I'm an ex-financial mentor, and I've been a sort of facilitator for nearly the last decade. I came across it in the community work that I was doing and never looked back. More recently, I've now had a career change into financial advice, and that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years now, which is really exciting. We also have Tom with us from Te Ara Ahunga Ora. Tom is the personal finance lead, and he'll be dropping in every now and then to share some of his experience in the Q&As, and he'll just pop in along the way throughout this whole webinar as well. Just some little bits of extra tidbits that he can offer, which I'm really excited to hear. What's really important with these webinars is that Sorted provides free, independent, and impartial information around all things money matters. Sorted is run by Te Ara Ahunga Ora, as I mentioned, the Retirement Commission, and their aim is to empower the people of Aotearoa on their journeys to a better retirement by helping them understand money. We can't give you any specific financial advice during these sessions, but what we will do is give you some great resources that you can use to make more informed financial decisions. So make notes, and yeah, let's make sure we ask some questions as well. So hands up, or if you guys have been to any of the last Money Month webinars that we've had. This is the third one in our series. So we've previously looked at investments and supercharging your savings, and we've also looked at how to save your money and how that's related to your well-being as well. So make sure you tap into the ones so if you missed the previous two, they are available on the Sorted website. So you can find that. If you registered, then you will have got the email for the link as well, so you can rewatch it and share it with your friends and family. So there's no need to worry about remembering everything. It's all there for you to tap into when you want to later on. So before we go any further, let's set the scene with our karakia. We use this as a way to bring us together and really focus us in on the session that we have ahead of us, but also on our own personal financial journeys. Tuia e ronga, tuia e rara, tuia e roto, tuia e wahu, tuia ki te Ara Ahunga Ora, kia whaihua, kia ora. Homie, tuie, taekie. So let's pause for the next hour or so and have a look at how we can address being debt-free. So what we're looking at today is to really help you with the maths, to give you some tips that you can use to help you avoid unnecessary interest, ultimately to provide you with some strategies to help you pay off your debt and suggest some real ways to save tens of thousands of dollars by ditching your debt more quickly. We have 3 ways that you can engage with us during these webinars. If you've been on the previous ones, you'll be familiar with how these sort of run. We have polls that will pop up throughout the session. That's just to get you thinking really quickly. So go with your first instinct response there, get your ideas and feelings for different things. So these polls will pop up. You will have opportunities to share in the chat, like what we're doing at the moment. And then we will also have times for questions. And we'll be using the Q&A box for these as well. So anytime you have a question, hop into the Q&A box. You'll find that on your Zoom bar, and you will find we will either answer them as we go, or there will be certain times during the session as well. So Tom and I will be keeping an eye on that. And we've also got a whole team of Sorted people working behind the scenes. You'll see them on the participants list. They have the name Sorted after their name as well. So they're there, making sure your questions do not get missed. So during this time, we will make sure that you become familiar with the different Sorted website tools that we have on the website. You will be seeing quite a few of them today. And obviously there are the guides that can back all of this research up, and you can go and find out more on the Sorted website for different guides and blogs around your particular needs and monies. The videos that we share will also be available on the Sorted website as well. So let's start off with a quick chat. What is the one thing you're hoping to get out of today's session? Hop into the chat there and let's just see what it is. Why have you signed on today? Why are you joining us? What's the one thing you're hoping to get out of this session? Oh, all right, we're seeing some things come through. Looking at high interest. Yep, managing debt better. Just to pick up some tips. That's fantastic. Capital letters, pay off the mortgage. Brilliant. Looking at ways to save as well. Quite a few people wanting to find out about mortgages, tips and tricks for paying off debt quicker. A few people wanting to be able to support clients. So it sounds like we might have some financial mentors on the line. Fantastic. Paying off debt faster, smashing the mortgage. I love the terminology there. And any new tips as you head into your older years. So fantastic. We've got some great, it's great to hear what it is that you're after for today. And I'll be keeping those in mind as we talk about the different things today during today's session. So thank you for hopping in there and just sharing what it is you're trying to get out of today's session. Growing your money is not just about saving and investing, which we talked about last week, but each time you accelerate your repayments on borrowing, especially high interest debt, you are strengthening your financial situation. And so that's something really important for us to be aware of. In the very first webinar we ran during Money Week, we discussed the different impact that debt can have on our financial well-being. One study shows that the increased money concerns can lead to a fall in our IQ of about 13 or 14 IQ points. That's quite scary when you think about it. So having money concerns lowers our ability to think more clearly, and it's even worse than if we didn't have a good night's sleep. So if you think you're operating in less capacity with a bad night's sleep, it's even worse if we have money concerns. According to our most recent data, 55% of New Zealanders are feeling financially uncomfortable. 23% are losing sleep over their finances. 32% are worried about the amount of debt they are in. And 10% are distracted by money at work. So if you're feeling any of this, you are not alone. And the fact that we're all here means that we're thinking about some of these things. So you're in good company. What we want to do is take away that stress and that feeling of scarcity, so that we can have the headspace to free up our thinking around money, and so we can tackle some of these things with a bit more clarity. And that's what we're trying to do today. When it comes to debt, it definitely comes in all shapes and sizes. We have buy now, pay later. We have credit cards, overdrafts, mortgages, student loans. And that's just to name a few. You've probably heard of even more in there, and feel free to hop into the chat if you like. But there are different types of debts that are out there that we may be offered or we may come across. When it comes to debt, compounding can help us grow things, but with debt, it just makes us pay even more. So we want to stay on the good side. We want to make sure that that interest that can have a way of dragging us down can also build us back up. So we talked about how compound interest is our friend when it comes to investing, and it can definitely get in the way if we're trying to pay off debt as well. So what are the types of high interest debt have you come across? Or maybe it's bitten you a little bit. Hop into the chat and just, what are some of the high interest debt that you have come across? Maybe some of the financial mentors can share some of the ones they have come across, just to highlight how much it can really bite. Credit cards are quite common, for sure. I remember turning 18 and being offered my very first credit card and having not a clue what that was about. Wanted to make sure that my 18-year-old had a little bit more information about that before they were offered that sort of thing. Personal loans, various ranges of interest rates there coming through in the chat, 16.45. Cash advances on credit cards, that can hit quite high as well. Car financing, personal loans at 48%. Yeah, different percentages coming through there. Lots of credit card debt can often bite us. Somebody there mentioned reverse mortgages as well. So some things can be fantastic tools, but sometimes they don't work in our advantage at all. Different cash converter type loans, buy now, pay later. Yeah, there's lots of different types of high interest debt that might bite us. The short-term loans can be really high as well. The payday lenders, they can bite quite hard too. So what we want to do is think about ways that we can avoid ending up with some of these really high interest types of loans, because they can really weigh us down. So let's use the time we have, because it's here and we might as well. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things that we need to think about when considering debt. The first thing to think about is why. Why are you borrowing that money in the first place? Is it something that you need to be borrowing? Is it something that you could be borrowing money for? Or could you actually borrow the item from a friend? So what is your why? Is it a want or is it a need? And so that flows into what are your options. If it is a need and maybe it's an emergency, do you have an emergency fund that you can tap into and use that? I know it was helpful for us when our hot water cylinder packed up. Having that emergency fund that meant that we could go and fix it. Take into account insurance as needed, but also using that emergency fund was really key. What are our options for paying? Maybe it's with cash, maybe it's purchasing something secondhand. Maybe, as I mentioned, it's borrowing the item from someone instead of buying it, if it's something that you don't actually want to have in your house long term. Perhaps you are able to approach work and income for some assistance there, or friends and family might be able to help you out. There are also the likes of low interest or no interest loans that you might qualify for. And then there are the more obvious ones such as banks and finance companies. So there are many options we can get to before we have that high interest debt there as an option. Making sure we have the right interest rate that's for us. You can actually find out the different interest rates that are currently available in New Zealand by going to interest.co.nz. I'm sure someone from Sorted will hop into the chat and just share that one with you guys again. But interest.co.nz, you can see all the different interest rates that are out there for debt, but also for savings. So it's very handy to know. Next consideration is to check the fees and the charges, because not all products are the same, not all options are the same. So know what the different fees are, but also what the different charges are, because they all start to add up. Because not only do you have the interest rate, which is probably the most obvious one, but there are other costs that get tacked on there as well. You might be required to have insurance, or you might be able to say no to that insurance if it comes under your home and contents. There are establishment fees, documentation fees, late fees, penalty interest. It might even be something called a personal property and securities register fee, so PPSR fee added on there as well. So know what they are and what you're being charged. And then how will that debt work? How will you pay it back? Will it be weekly, fortnightly, monthly? How is the interest being added on? So understanding the different elements to how that debt builds is really, really key. Sorted has some fantastic guides for us to check out. So if you want to dive into those different considerations a bit more, have a look at the Sorted guide, Tackling Debt, understanding how you can use buy now, pay later, what you need to know before you use credit, and how to get out of debt as well. So those guides are fantastic. So we worry about debt because it takes up our headspace. It makes it really hard for us to focus on the other things that really matter. Interest has a huge impact on us as well. It can really hold us back from paying that debt off quicker. And there are some considerations to take into account before we even decide to take on debt. So those are some of the things we can think about around debt, but what if I'm in debt? What can I do next? So here's our first poll for today. I just want you to think about if you're in debt at the moment, how much are you currently carrying? Now, we can't see who's responding to this, so don't worry. We're not going to see your name attached to this, but have you got minimal debt, average debt, more than you would like, substantial? Maybe it's a bit overwhelming. See all the different results coming through. It's very good. You're all nice and quick, so I appreciate that. Just go with your first instinct for these ones. Really good. Well, let's end that poll. I think most people have answered there. And Natalie, if you'd like to share those results, that's fantastic. Thank you. So everyone can see the different results there. And we are so evenly split, really, aren't we? Lots of 25% going on there with a small percentage there in the overwhelming. But lots of us have substantial debt. Lots of us have more than we would like. And then average and minimal as well. So we do have debt that's in our lives that might be getting in the way of us achieving our goals, especially if it's in that overwhelming side of the spectrum there. If it's minimal, then it's probably a different relationship altogether. So in the chat, what concerns you the most about debt? If you're sitting in that, if it's more than you would like it to be, it's substantial, what concerns you the most about debt? If you're in the other end of the spectrum and it's minimal and you're not too worried about it, why is that? Hop into the chat and just share some of your ideas. What concerns you the most about not having debt? I see a few people saying not having an emergency fund. Yeah, so reducing your financial freedom. Yeah. Very cool. Is anything catching your eye in there, Tom? It's flicking through super fast.
Yeah, these are amazing responses, and it's a lot about how it's keeping us from getting ahead. It's limiting our choices. At the beginning, debt seems like it gives us more options because we have money to play with, to borrow. But in the end, it actually has the opposite effect as well. Is really coming through in the chat.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. It's so limiting. Having to budget and then not sticking to it as well, creating mental worries. Yep, absolutely. Not being able to achieve our goals. Thank you guys for sharing all that. That is fantastic. So let's have a little look about thinking about the strategies to pay off debt. So let's watch a video.
We need to correro about the D word. Debt. Debt is any time you owe money to others. It can really drag us down. It is stressful, and the longer you keep it, the more expensive it gets. Missing repayments will cost you even more with late fees and interest, and we don't want that. It will also affect your credit rating and your ability to borrow in the future. But you can work your way out of it and get debt-free, and just imagine how that would feel. So, here's a few things that you can do right now to get rid of debt quicker. To pay down debt as fast as you can, you'll have to pay off more. So, you'll want to try and find extra money in your budget and funnel it towards your repayments. This might mean a few sacrifices for a while, but it'll save you money in the long run. If you have multiple debts, then you should make the minimum payments on all of them, but focus any extra money on paying off one debt at a time. Which debt you pick to pay off first matters. The quickest way out of multiple debts is to pay off the one costing you the most, and that's usually the one with the highest interest rate. This is called a debt avalanche. Or you might want to build a bit of momentum and start with the debt with the smallest balance, and then take on the big ones. This is called a debt snowball. If you've got a lot of different debts, it can sometimes feel like it's all too much. This is when debt consolidation might be useful. This means that all your debts are consolidated into a single loan, often with a lower interest rate, which can save you heaps in interest and help you repay it all. But for debt consolidation to really work, your relationship with debt needs to change. That might mean cancelling your cards so you steer clear of more debt. Let's recap on how to get out of debt quicker. Find extra money for repayments. Focus on one debt at a time. You could start big or you could start small. And if you make it work for you, consider debt consolidation. Start with these tips and say haere to debt.
So those are some really good tips for us to start with. Looking at our budget or our spending plan is key. Seeing if there's any room whatsoever to spare a few dollars to make sure that we can tackle that debt, whether it's with the debt snowball or the debt avalanche or using consolidation. But a small sacrifice in the short run is all about getting that long-term win. So have a look at your spending plan. Is there something you can trim back just for a short period of time, making that your goal to pay off your debt? And if we make it a goal and we really tap into what we're trying to achieve, we can have that momentum to keep going, especially if it's a sacrifice, especially if it's a bit more short-term. So get that goal, get that why going in there for you. But have a look at your budget. It's there for a reason, and there's a lot of flexibility within the tool for you to just tweak around and play and make it work for you. And then look at making the minimum repayments on all of our debts, but focus on paying down one at a time above the minimum. And this is where it can be quite interesting to see how people like to tackle these too. But the cost is not just financial. It could be a mental cost as well. And you may know that when you miss a payment, you will get lots of phone calls, lots of texts, maybe emails, and perhaps even a personal visitation. So it's not just about the financial side of things, but we do want to make the minimum payments so that we can make sure that that loan, that debt does get tackled. We don't want it to stay or grow in the worst case scenario. So making the minimum repayments on your debt, if you just do that as your strategy and just stick to the minimum, it will take a very long time to pay off your debt. And who benefits the most if we just pay off the minimum? It's not us. It's the people who lend us the money. So every dollar we pay above the minimum means that we are winning. We are reducing our debt. We're paying less in interest as well. And that's all in our favor. So by using the sorted tool, the debt tool, you can see how much of a difference it makes if we just pay off more than the minimum. So pay the minimum, add $5, add $10, add $20, and see what effect that will have in the long run. You will be really, really surprised. Even that $1 or $2 makes a real big difference in that long run. So you can use that sliding tool and just see how that works for you. If you don't like the fortnightly timeline, for weekly or monthly, you can change that as well in the on the calculator. So you can work in the time frame that works for you. It's a great flexible tool there. I have, in my time as a financial mentor, I've worked with many clients who accumulated thousands and thousands of dollars of debt over the years, and most people want a quick fix. By the time they come and see a mentor, they really want it fixed. And unfortunately, the reality is if it takes years to get into debt, it's going to take years to get out of it. Working with a financial mentor can really help you stick to something if it's really difficult. And it's okay to not be alone. In fact, I encourage you to not do it alone. Work with a financial mentor so they can help you develop some really good strategies. But we were able to help people out. There were a few different ways we can do it. And I want to go through a couple of these different strategies that we talked about in the video. The first one being the debt snowball.
With a debt snowball, you knock out the smallest debt first, move on to the next smallest, and keep going until you've got the momentum of a snowball rolling downhill, eventually taking them all out. There are two advantages to this. You get the boost of seeing one of your debts disappear sooner, and that sense of progress propels you towards eliminating the next one, and so forth. Much about money depends on how we think about it. And getting on a roll with a debt snowball can really work for some people. And since some of the small debts may be to family or friends, paying those back early can benefit those relationships too.
So that's the debt snowball. How about the other side of the coin, which is the debt avalanche?
A debt avalanche is where you take out the debt that's costing you the most first. You start with the high interest debt, like credit cards or a car loan, and as soon as that's taken care of, move on to the next highest interest rate. Rinse and repeat. Financially speaking, the avalanche is a quicker way out of debt since we can save more on interest. It's the most efficient way to repay.
I love how emphatic Kate is with that one. It's the most efficient way to get out of debt. Now, I probably have a different opinion on this, and I wouldn't be surprised, Tom, if we differ on these two, to be honest. But while Tom and I talk, hop into the chat and just let me know, do either of these two strategies appeal to you? Is there one that appeals more than the other? Tom, would you be surprised to think that I like the debt snowball?
Not at all. I'm sure you've seen it work quite well for
Yeah,
clients actually, and because it gives
definitely.
you that motivation and gets you going. And even mathematically speaking, it's not that much of a difference very often. So everybody needs to find what works for them.
Absolutely. And knowing that there are options, you don't have to tackle the highest interest debt to make a difference. You can start with the smallest one and still make a difference as well. For me, it was a case of seeing people just tick off the debt. You can cross it off. That's one you can rip up and put away and not have to worry about again. It just reduced that load so much quicker. But some people are more mathematically inclined. They like the maths and they like to know that if they tackle the high interest one first, that works for them. So both can work. And I love seeing in the chat that people have different attitudes towards them. Lots of people like the idea of the snowball and just as much like the idea of the avalanche. So that's a fantastic tool, strategy that you can implement as well. And if you don't know how to do it on your own, a financial mentor can do that with you as well. So when it comes to debt consolidation, that one comes up as well. A lot of the times it can be considered as an option, and it can be an option depending on your situation. If you're looking at if the bottom line of how much you're spending per week is your real key focus, then debt consolidation can reduce the amount that you're paying per week. But because of the nature of consolidation, it wraps all your debts up into one loan and it can spread it out for a longer period of time, even though the interest rate is lower, you can end up paying more in total by the end of that time period. So it depends on what you want the most, whether it's paying less or paying in total or paying less today. So it can work. And I think a few people mentioned that the Good Shepherd offers no interest loans or nils loans. And there are a few other places out there as well that you might qualify to get consolidation that way. But talk to a mentor if it's something that you're really considering, because you don't want to use debt consolidation in the wrong way or end up paying more in interest than you have to. So think about how much you need and understand how a debt consolidation works there for you. Now, if we really want to, if we're looking at our spending plan and we think there's not an awful lot there that I can cut down, how about we increase our income? What can we do to add in another stream of income? Maybe it's a side hustle. Do you have an additional job that you can build a little bit of money from, a hobby or a skill or a passion? These are great ways to tap into another income stream and really help you out of debt more quickly. You could go even bigger if you liked. Perhaps you have a spare room and you could have a boarder for a short period of time. Obviously, check things like the IRD when it comes to income and tax, but side hustles can be used as a way of clearing your debt quicker. So long as you use that money to pay down your debt and don't spend it too quickly, remember it's for a purpose and it's got that focus there for you. But you might have a side hustle you can use. And get creative as well. So we all know that we can sell stuff. Now remember, we don't want to sell the things we need. It's the things that are sitting around that we're not using anymore. Maybe it's a little bit of the clutter side of things, and we're heading into spring. So it's a great time to have a garage sale and just raise some extra money. Then use that to pay off your debt. Remember that short-term pain for long-term gain. So have that focus on that long-term to get you through that short-term. Being creative might be a case of finding cheaper alternatives for us to do. Make a list of free things that you can do in your local community. If you have children, work out what you can do for fun that costs you nothing within your city. I'm sure there is lots that you can do. Hop into the different Facebook groups and see what other people are doing out there as well. But even if you don't have a family, if it's you and your partner, what can you do that costs you nothing? Find those cheaper alternatives. And then see if you can make a lump sum repayment on any of your debt. Tom, did you want to just talk to the comment about, I think somebody mentioned paying a lump sum on their mortgage?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I also want to address in the chat. Lots of people are asking about financial mentors, and I've put the Money Talks hotline in there. We're really lucky to have the team at Money Talks and this free helpline that we have, which is actually a referral service to a financial mentor network. So Definitely would encourage you, the great team over there led by Ange. It's a great group of people. And then in terms of lump sum payments on mortgages, there are times when there's what we used to call a prepayment penalty, or for making more of a payment. It depends on the type of mortgage and whether it's a variable interest rate, but very often we can make higher repayment amounts than seems like it would be allowed. And it doesn't hurt to ask at all, and it can make such a meaningful difference in how quickly you take down your mortgage.
Yeah. And if it turns out that you can't make a lump sum payment now, there might be a time when it's time to refix your mortgage that you can do something about it then in structuring your mortgage. So you could be setting aside that money for the lump sum payment in the future, short-term future anyway. I see some people commenting about getting kids involved with understanding about your finances as well, and it's always a great thing to do. Have these conversations. If you're selling things, doing a spring clean to pay off debt, involve the kids. Get them thinking about how they can work towards helping the family in general. And I'm sure they would be able to help you find some cheap alternatives to free fund. They don't really care if we spend lots of money or not. I think a lot of the time it's about just spending time together. So here's the slide that mentions Money Talks as well for us. So it's a free helpline. You can contact Money Talks via text, email, chat on their website, phone as well. They have access to I think it's about 180 or so different financial mentoring services all around the country. So you can they will tee you up with somebody in your local area as well. And the great thing about financial mentoring is you're not limited to 1 or 2 sessions. They will work with you as long as you need and as long as you're willing. To be honest, so long as I had somebody who was wanting to work with us, then I would work with them for years if needed. I'm happy to be on that journey with people. If you are working, then you may also have access to an employee assistance program. And in that case, you can often access counselling, job mentoring as well, but also financial mentoring. So you won't find a financial advisor, but you will find a financial mentor through an employee assistance program. That one is usually limited to 3 sessions because it's paid for by your employer usually. And if you need to talk even further, perhaps you want to talk about mortgages or investments, then a financial advisor can help you through those things as well. So if you're worried about your mortgage strategies, then maybe it's a good chance to have a chat with a financial advisor in mortgages. And yeah, don't forget to ask them how they get paid. It's usually through the bank, not through you. So shout out to Money Talks. I was going to mention you anyway because I've been seeing you guys sharing all the different stuff on social media around what Sorted's been doing. So I love that we work together with all these things. So in this session, what have we looked at? We've looked at knowing what our debt is, looking at our spending plan and knowing where we can find that extra money so that we can pay off our debts quicker. Having that focus, having that goal is really key. And then don't be afraid to get creative. We've got it in us. We can be creative. And if you want to know some more strategies, then hop onto the Sorted website because there's heaps on there as well. So what about the mortgage? Now that was something that a lot of people talked about in the chat as the one thing they want to get out of today. So let's have a look at mortgages. Quick poll for you. This is just a yes, no, or I've had one in the past, but do you currently have a mortgage? Oh, let's see if the poll comes up here. Here we go. Very cool. Lots of people have mortgages. I'm waiting to see. Have in the past. Excellent. Yeah, looks like a good 75% of us have a mortgage or so. We can end that poll and share the results. Share the results. So there we go. We can see lots of people do have a mortgage. And a few have had one in the past. I can see in the chat that some people would like to get on the property ladder. So that's like a fourth option there. And a few people don't have a mortgage as well. So mortgages are really relevant to where we are. Lots of people have them, thinking about them, have had them in the past, so maybe have some experience that they can share there as well. But taking down our mortgage is really about thinking about that interest and how we can finish that mortgage quicker. So it goes back to those fundamentals that we talked about at the start. So knowing what our options are. When it comes to mortgages, our options are really in terms of fixed or floating mortgage rates. So floating can also be called variable. There are offset mortgages, there are revolving credit mortgages, and they're all really important things for us to know and understand when we're thinking about what our options are. Just a quick go over of what a revolving credit is. So a revolving credit mortgage is a bit like an overdraft for your everyday account. You borrow a set amount, but instead of making regular repayments, you pay back what you can and you redraw it if you need it. The idea is that you have the ability to pay more. So if you pay more onto the mortgage, then you pay less in interest, which is great if you've got a regular cash flow and you can put in more when you can. It can be difficult, and we've seen a few people in the chat mention about how revolving credits was one of those debts that can bite us a little bit. So it definitely takes a lot of care and management around revolving credit. Probably a slightly more simpler one is the offset mortgage. So the idea with the offset mortgage is that you have select savings accounts that you put against your mortgage. The idea being that you pay the difference on the two balances on interest. The interest you pay is only on the difference of those two balances. So you sacrifice the interest you may have earned on the savings account, but you pay less interest on the mortgage. So this works well when mortgage interest rates are higher than what you would have had from the savings interest rates. So they can be quite complex ideas to get our heads around, which is why the sorted website is a great place to go back to just to revise what those different things are. But those options are there for us, and some of them will work better for you and some will work better for other people that you know. Finding the best rate, back to the interest.co.nz site there as well can be a really quick way to see what the different interest rates are, because who wants to be flicking between different banks and lenders to find what the rate is? So interest.co.nz is good there. Checking the different fees and charges, again, knowing what you're being charged for and how it's being charged is really key, and then how that mortgage works. That can get quite complex as well. So again, hop onto the sorted site and just see what those charges might be and how it's structured, how it's working. We have the mortgage calculator, which is just what's showing up on the screen there for us, and it has been recently updated. So that's always exciting. I love new releases with the sorted tools. But this tool is really helpful to get an idea of how you can pay your mortgage off quicker and what it's costing you in terms of the total cost and also the interest. There are three key levers on this tool that you can use. One being time or term, as it's called here, the repayments that you're making, and the interest rate as well. So with the interest rates, you can see whether you're paying it weekly or fortnightly or monthly. And also you can see what interest rate you are paying. If you don't know your interest rate, there's a great little drop down in the tool as well. So you can see what your bank is, what your rate is, what your term is, and find it from there. Alternatively, you can choose to type in your own rate and override that and put in the rate that works for you. So it's a great tool for us to use, and it's worth hopping on and just seeing how those three levers work for us: the time, repayments, and rates. Because if we can reduce the time that we're paying off our mortgage, we will be reducing the amount of interest we pay overall. So another poll for us. Loving the polls today. All right, should I put it on the mortgage? So if you were going to consolidate debt or make a purchase outside of your home, would you put it on the mortgage? For example, a car. If you were going to buy a car, would you put that on your mortgage? Or a holiday even? Then the answers come through there. Lots in the no category for this one. Should I put it on the mortgage? I'm going to end the poll there and I'll share the results. So you guys can see the results. Quite a lot of us are in the no camp. A few people in the I do so often, only 1% there, but lots of people in the yes category there as well. And a few people saying, I don't even know what that means. So hopefully we'll find out, you'll be able to hear a little bit more about what that means through this part here. I'm going to stop sharing so we can get rid of that. So the idea is if you have a mortgage, you may have the option of buying a car and putting that on your mortgage instead of taking out a personal loan. I guess it's a bit of a perk of being a good customer from the bank's point of view. They know that you're likely to repay it, so they're likely to lend you a little bit more money, and you have the house, which they're happy to use as collateral there. So if you have put something on the mortgage before, what was your reasoning? Pop into the chat. What was our thinking behind putting our car or our holiday on the mortgage? Some people saying yes for an asset, but not for a holiday. And that can be really key there as well. So the thinking being that it was a lower interest. Yep. Double glazing on the mortgage. So that was adding to the house and using the mortgage as well. Ultimately, a lot of people are saying it costs less to put it on the mortgage. There's a lower interest rate. Some people have bought cars that way. Yep. Electric vehicles as well. So a lot of the time it's because of that lower interest rate. And that can be quite tempting, to be honest, because we see that lower interest rate and we think, yes, I'll put it on the mortgage. Well, a lot of us have done that, and some of us often. So it's something that's quite common in our thinking. Let's use the example of a $20,000 holiday, and let's just see what would happen if we put that on our mortgage. So I know we've said holiday, it could be a $20,000 car. Don't worry too much about the fact that it's a holiday, and let's just see what would happen if we put a $20,000 asset onto the mortgage. So the mortgage calculator, I'm going to put $20,000 in there, and we're going to select, we're going to go for about a 6% mortgage over 20 years. So we can type in our percentage, and we can change the term as well, 20 years. So if we had 20 years left on our mortgage, on average a 6% mortgage rate, we might find that we have fortnightly repayments of about $68, meaning that our total amount that we would pay would be $34,355. So that's $34,355, and the holiday was $20,000. So we can already see the effect of interest right there. So what happens then if we were to take that same holiday, but this time we take out a personal loan? So it's a 5-year loan, so 60 months at a 15% interest rate, because that's approximately what you might get for various interest rates there for a personal loan. So that $20,000 over 60 months at a 15% interest rate would end up costing us $28,548 in total, with the interest amount right there. So that is $5,807 less than if we put it on the mortgage. Why is that? What's the difference? Because the interest rate was higher. So the key thing here is time. Time made the difference there. It wasn't the interest rate percentage, which was what was leading us to put it onto the mortgage in the first place, but time. So time is our biggest factor. There we go. There's our mouse for time. So what if we did a combination of these two ideas? So what if we combined our idea of putting it on the mortgage, but also taking into account time? So you can use the mortgage calculator or the debt calculator, if you like, to work out how you can combine those two. So now you take your $20,000 mortgage and you put it on the mortgage at 6% interest rate, but pay it off now within 5 years. What that would do is it would shave off a lot of money off your loan. In fact, you could get it down to $22,543. So we've jumped all the way down from 34 down to 24 down to 22,000. So combining that knowledge can be really, really useful. And for you, it might not be a case of paying off that maximum amount. So 5 years at 15% was too high, maybe. Maybe that monthly repayment was too much. Bring it down a little bit. As long as it's higher than what you would have been paying on the mortgage, you can still get that benefit of time there for you. So it does depend on how long it lasts. The mortgage is cheaper as long as you repay it quicker. So that's that whole concept of paying more than the minimum really kicking in there. The idea being to treat it like a short-term debt, not a long-term 20-year debt. So when it comes to our mortgages, we need to understand the fundamentals, know what each of those terms mean. What do those words mean? How do they relate to me? And if we don't know, then Sorted has those fantastic tools that we can use, not just the calculators, but also the guides. And there's even a glossary. So if you're really not sure, head to the glossary and just find out, what does it mean? The chances are other people have asked the same question, and it'll be in the glossary there for you to have a look at. And then if you need help, talk to somebody. Talk to a mentor, talk to a mortgage advisor. They can help you with these things. All right, we're about to head into question time now. Now, we've got a few common questions that tend to come up, so we'll address those first, and then we're going to open the floor for you guys to hop into the Q&A and just ask your questions. I know that there have been some questions popping in there, but I've been saving them for now, thinking this will be a good time for us to deal with these questions. But a real common question that comes off is, should I pay off my debt or should I save? And generally, we would say to do both. At the very least, aim to have an emergency fund of $500 or $1,000 so that you have that buffer in times of trouble. An emergency fund means that you can tap into that, use that money, at least start with that money before you need to even take on debt. So it can really save you from snowballing into further debt along the way. And your KiwiSaver is about your retirement. So saving for your KiwiSaver, I know it's very tempting to turn off the contributions and go on a holiday, on a payment suspension. But by doing that, we're robbing our future us from our retirement. So if you want to have that amazing retirement, try and keep that going as much as you can. So do both, pay off debt and save. It's finding that balance. Is there anything you wanted to add to that one, Tom?
A lot of the questions that have come through, well, a handful of them have been about refinancing a mortgage or remortgaging, it's sometimes called. And so I've put the link to our guide all about that in, you'll find it in the chat.
Excellent. Thanks for popping that there. So, probably a lot of people are starting to think about that as interest rates are changing as well. So, yep, very, very timely. Another common question is, why does it take so long to repay debt? And a lot of the time it's because of those hidden costs. So interest rate is quite common. We see that, we talk about the interest rate, but it's those other costs that if we get further behind, it becomes really difficult. Miss a payment and it starts to add up. You have the penalty interest, you have the fees, and if they send you a letter, there's probably a cost for that as well. So that's what really starts to hit and make it hard. So that's often what it is for that one. Another common question is, if I'm in over my head, what are the lender's obligations? So the person who has given us, lent us that money, do have obligations. They must act carefully and responsibly at all times, and they need to treat you with reasonably and with respect. It's not too much to ask for, really. It's what we kind of hope for from reasonable human beings. But actually it's under legislation. It's part of the Responsible Lending Code, and it's part of the Credit Contract and Consumer Finance Act, or the CCCFA, as we like to call it as well. So they are required to treat you with respect. Lenders are also obligated to consider any hardship application that you make. So they might give you the option of taking a payment suspension. They might allow you to change your time, so increase the term a little bit, or they might also offer you an interest-only period of payment, so you only pay the interest on, say, your mortgage, or a combination of all of these things. But they must consider your application if you make one. In terms of if things go poorly and you are in the position of having things repossessed, then there are processes that lenders must follow in terms of repossession, in terms of what they can repossess, but also how they repossess things. So they must not act oppressively. And in fact, if they do, there are quite significant breach costs or fines that can be laid out, not just to the company of the repossession company, which is about $600,000, I believe, but also to the individual. So there is also that obligation on the individual who is approaching the door to repossess things of about $200,000. So there is that little bit of a rod there, not just the carrot. Please treat people nicely. There is a bit of a rod there as well. So lenders have to treat you fairly and offer you the ability to pay back your loans through the hardship applications. But what about us as borrowers, as the people who are asking for this side of things, what do we need to do as well? Well, we need to get in touch with our lender as soon as we know we're going to miss a payment. As soon as you know that you're not going to make it, contact them, talk to them, keep that conversation going, because that is really key. They're just another human on the other end of the phone. So talk to them, let them know, start the process of the hardship application sooner rather than later. But if you find that you've missed a payment and you're scared now to ring them, still ring them, because they're still obligated to talk to you and help you even if you've missed a payment. So do that anyway. Get that conversation going. But if you do miss payments, the chances are there will be the extra fees, the extra interest that gets charged on there as well. You may have to give back the items and have it repossessed. So there are implications around that as well. And if you can't cover the loan, then you might have had a guarantor sign up with you. And in that case, the guarantor might be asked to pay for the loan instead. So there are some big implications there as well. And it may affect your credit history if you miss a payment for more than 30 days. So you do have a little window. It's about, you can be a little bit late on a payment and it not affect your credit history too badly, but more than 30 days, it's definitely going to start to leave a mark. So those are a basic outline of our lenders' obligations and our obligations as borrowers. But the Commerce Commission and the consumer websites has heaps of information that you can go into there as well. What about buy now, pay later? Isn't that one interest free? Have many people mentioned buy now, pay later in the chats there, Tom?
A lot of the questions just recently have been about credit scores. This is a really good one, and then I'll come back to buy now, pay later. It's what's the point of credit scores? What are the benefits we get? It seems like banks use it against us. They score us. So what do we get from having a good score? And I just want to cover that. Is that primarily it's about getting better lending terms, better borrowing terms. So lower interest rates, possibly lower fees, but it's mostly about making money cheaper. So if you have a good score, basically the lender is assessing that you're someone who is reliable, can make repayments, will be good to work with, and so they'll give you terms that are better for you in borrowing. So it's really about future borrowing many of the times.
And our credit score is not just about our borrowing as well. It's also about how we have paid things off, just normal things like your phone bill, your power bill, how good you are at making payments. So your credit score, you don't have to build that up by taking out a loan in the first place. You can build up a good credit score just by paying your power bill on time, just by paying your mobile phone bill on time. So these things can just add to your history without you even really having to think about it too much. So what about buy now,
yeah, let's talk about that just a second, because when it's used properly, it is interest-free, but it is still, it's being marketed not as debt, not as borrowing at all. It's just more like a different way to pay for something. Unfortunately, it is. You're actually borrowing from a company and then paying them off regularly in installments, which sounds good as long as it doesn't cost you too much. However, we are seeing a lot of people get in trouble because they have too many going on at once. They're using it for everyday things, even like food. And so it really opened up a can of worms for people, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's very easy to focus on just that weekly repayment instead of the total cost. So when it comes to buy now, pay later, we need to think about the total cost that we're spending, not just that weekly repayment. Yes, you might be able to pay it weekly, but what does it add up to in total? So if we try and limit it to one at a time, at least we can have a bit more control over the situation, because it is no interest. So sure, it can be used as a cash flow management tool, but we need to control it, not it control us. So be proactive, set reminders in your calendar about repayments. Make sure you have the money in your bank account so that when the payment comes out, it doesn't bounce. So you don't get the penalties, because those penalties will still be there if you miss a payment. And that's how things can really start to move backwards. So be proactive, have one at a time, have the money in the account, set reminders for the repayments, and remember this is debt. So treat it like debt as well. So what about the questions that you guys have? Hop into the Q&A and let's see what questions we have for the last, say 2 minutes, and then we'll tidy up the rest of the webinar. Depending on how we go, we might open up further questions after that as well. But hop into the Q&A, guys. What questions have we got?
Unicia, there's a great one that would be awesome to get your opinion on. Is it better to rent a house or own a house with a mortgage? It's a big one, but I think it would be great if we touched on it just a little bit.
Yeah, I think it really depends. I don't think there's one right answer for that one. I mean, with renting, you have the flexibility. If you want to up and go, you can. You pack up the house and you move city, move country. You don't have to worry about repairs and maintenance. You don't have to worry about the rates. If the sewerage breaks under the property, not your problem. So renting, yes, you're paying somebody else's mortgage. You're not building up an asset, but it's the pros and cons. And it depends on your life stage as to what's going to work for you. Personally, we have a mortgage. So we've decided we want to lay down roots. We want to have that asset that we're building up for our retirement. And so we're happy to take on the extra costs of repairs and maintenance. But, when you have to replace the roof, crikey, it costs a fair bit. And those rates keep going up. We don't have an awful lot of control over that. So I think there's no right or wrong. Many people rent for life, but it's working out what's going to work for you now, but also what's going to work for you in retirement. Do you want to still be renting in retirement, or do you want to have been mortgage free? So it's a balancing game, in my opinion. No right or wrong. Did you have any thoughts on that one, Tom?
And that's fabulous. I was so glad that you brought in that long-term perspective over retirement, because in the long term, we do need somewhere to live, and we are seeing that people who arrive at retirement and who are mortgage-free are much better positioned in order, for example, for the longer term. But we do know that in the years to come, we're going to see more and more retirees who are renters, and it's going to increase even 100% from where it has been. And so, this is going to be part of reality as well.
And I think the living situation the whole landscape will look different. We might have people flatting again. So we flatted when we were teenagers and 20-somethings. We might be flatting together with groups of older people, which, I don't know, might be fun. Who knows? But it will be a different landscape for sure. Any other questions we want to comment on here? So lots have been answered. Well done. People have been busy in the background while I've been chatting on the screen. Emma asks, is it better to break your mortgage term to get a better interest rate? You would really need to look at the break cost fees for that one and weigh out the difference. A mortgage broker would be able to help you out with working out the benefit for that one. Hard to say. You need to do the maths on it. Do we have the Good Shepherd link up in the chat anywhere?
Yeah, I'm sure we can get it. Yeah, I'll have it in a moment.
So here, is it advisable to drop the credit limit at the same time as making repayments? If you don't need the high credit limit, then by all means drop it. It can be a temptation to have a high limit, but if you do need it, it's so long as you're paying off your credit card, then you're winning on that side of things. The idea with a credit card, if you can pay it off completely every month, then you will be able to avoid paying interest. You'll still have the account fee, the card fee, but if you can avoid paying interest by paying off the credit card every month, then it can be used wisely. But if we get stuck into that cycle of paying minimum payments, then we will get interest charged on that, and it can be quite high. In that case, I'd drop the credit limit. Tom, is there one you wanted to answer?
There's one here about the range or an idea of what costs might be in terms of break fees or repayment of cash incentives. And I just want to stress that each mortgage is an individual deal on itself, and you really have to go to the lender to figure out and to understand what are the costs involved for that particular deal. with the lenders. So definitely want to urge you to do your research, but with particular deals in mind. You can get some ideas from mortgage brokers, as Unicia mentioned, because they know a little bit more the market in general. But I'd just like to stress that it really depends so much on the situation.
It really, really does, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, I'm just mindful of time here, so let's wrap up and we can answer any more questions at the end if we've got time there, Tom.
Yep.
So we have really looked at what we need to consider when we're thinking about debt in general, understanding how it affects our well-being, but also looking at the different types of debt that's out there and ways that we can get out of it. So we really covered off some fantastic strategies that I hope you're able to really grab hold of and use for you. Remember, we are here to help. Sorted has some amazing tools on their website, plenty on social media as well, and you can engage with the team that way too. We have covered a lot of the different tools today, so hopefully you guys are logging in and just trying out these tools. I think you actually are from the stats I've seen, so that's really, really exciting. Use them, they're there for us. And they're there for you, I should say. Well, we put them there for you, and fantastic that you are using them. So this session, how has it gone in building your confidence? Has it increased your confidence around talking about debt? Somewhat, that's fantastic. And be honest, if it's not really done it for you, hop into the chat and just ask a question, and let's try and fix that while we can and just deal with what that thing is that's holding you back there. Lots of people in the poll there, and share the results so we can see before people start to head off for the rest of their lunch break. Yeah, fantastic. Really, thank you guys for joining us. It's been such a pleasure having you here. Remember that we have our next session coming up next week, same time, same place, and we'll be talking about a slightly more difficult subject, and that is looking at how to prepare for the worst and stay covered. So that's around insurances, power of attorney, wills, and things like that. So, I was looking for my tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou Māori ora kia tātou. For some reason that slide wasn't there, but thank you so much for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Kia ora.